sharing your love from your heart and your mind.
Your heart and your mind.
Doing your best to make this time sublime.
Oh yeah.
We've got the power. We make the day.
We make the day.
Make the day.
This is our hour to have good come our way.
Come
Good
on.
things come our way.
Where do we begin? Where do we begin? How will we know the end? It's a struggle every day.
Every day.
Every day. And we try hard to make a way. It's amazing and see. When we get out, then we're free. We're free. Now there's a wall with no door. We got to stretch our wings and soar.
Over the cities, over the...
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, coming on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today, and feeling very grateful to reconnect with a dear friend and a guy who has just been putting out tasteful art for decades. So much of what he continues to produce is beyond relevant, and I guess maybe the realistic and humbling part of the whole thing is that so many of the issues that he has been riffing on and rapping on and doing poetry to for so many decades, so many of these problems still exist. Some of them have been exacerbated. And, really there is no roadmap forward. And I just think that our elders are people that, well, definitely my guest learned from his elders. And I just feel like in some ways, those who have had real experiential learning have actually really had a lot of adversity in their lives and ultimately have been able to express that in their own unique individual voice, are the ones we need to hear from the most. Abiodun Oyewole, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you very much. And I appreciate what you just said. Because adversity is a part of living. And somehow I think that's the barometer that allows you to can act, so you can say that I'm alive. Because if you go through life without adversity, I don't think that you're going to be able to challenge yourself to grow. And growing is very much evolution, I would say, is very much a daily thing for all of us. And I'm very grateful to be on your show and to know that you're a part of that whole pattern. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I wanted to just start right there because I agree with you. I mean, the biggest periods of growth in my life have been, under adverse circumstances. And one thing I don't think we talked about last time was, can you just talk about the period of time that you were incarcerated and really kind of what it was like at the beginning and ultimately, what that experience, how that experience molded your point of view?
Well, first of all, it was totally ridiculous for me to be in that situation. I always felt I was too smart to be caught up in some kind of madness with the law. I could work my way around it, but I put myself in the line of fire. I had a serious little cultural organization at Shaw University called the Yoruba Society. And I was feeding into the Yoruba village, which still exists in South Carolina, in Sheldon, South Carolina. It's called Oyotunji. And I was sending students there, because when I went on the campus of Shaw, I was appalled that Black students were practicing Greek fraternities and sororities.
Absolutely.
I said, why don't we just have some African societies? We got the Maasai, we got the Watusi, we got the Yoruba. So I started a Yoruba society at Shaw University. And it was a cultural thing. You had to get your name changed. We wore African clothes. And I was really trying to perpetuate a whole African movement from a cultural standpoint, because I knew that would be, we needed to recognize our strength and our worth and exactly hook up with where we came from, because that was erased from most of our minds. So that was an effort. I had about 50 students involved, and it was a wonderful thing. But at the same time, as I said earlier, it was cultural. At that period, and we're talking about 1969, there was this whole thing in the papers about blacks being militant. And I was not a militant. I was never a militant. I didn't like guns. I wasn't into guns. But I used to have these town meetings at Shaw, and I would tell people why we were doing this African thing and why they should get involved and how we should connect and so forth. And I had two guys, one guy in the group said, and suppose the police vamp on your little cultural organization. How you gonna protect your beautiful sisters and their boobas, lapis, and galas? Or you got a bulletproof dashiki, or you gonna knock them out with your afro? I mean, they were making jokes.
Gee.
And I said, you ain't got no guns. How you gonna protect anything? And I said, man, any idiot can get a gun. I said, that's not a big deal. But I went for the bait. I became stupid, and I allowed myself to get sucked into getting some guns. And there were two gun shops in Raleigh, North Carolina, Thorns and Dixies, and I helped develop a plan for some of my members to steal guns from those two places. Anyway, they stole some guns. We actually had them stashed in Reserve Hall, which was the basement of the president's mansion. But that's also the place where we did the newspaper, so we had access to that space. But two of my guys, one set of the guys that I had sent out, they came back. They didn't have any guns because they heard some noise. They dropped the duffel bag with the guns in it, and they felt silly when they got back and they didn't have any guns. And other guys had gotten guns. They were playing like Wyatt Earp and whatnot, acting still silly. And I wasn't there. I was someplace where everybody could see me because they thought I was crazy anyway. And I didn't want to be finger pointed for this crime. But when I came on campus in the morning, the coach of the football team, Mr. Clemens, I remember he said, "Hey, two of your boys are in jail for stealing some guns." And I heard from my members that there were three who had gone back to get the guns they dropped. And I'm saying now all of a sudden just two are in jail. So I realized that the whole time I had an informant in my organization. And we nicknamed him Sirhan. The same guy that shot Robert Kennedy. We gave him that name. And so what happened is I felt very obligated to get them out of jail. To make a long story short, I tried to get the president, who was King Cheek at the time, to get them out of jail. He said he would. I went back to his house that afternoon. He was gone. His wife said he went to Detroit. I had a professor at the school who liked me. She'd do anything for me. She hadn't gotten her check yet, but I wanted to get them out. The bail bondsman that usually gets kids out of school at our school wasn't going to touch them because they were from Pittsburgh, and he felt that he'd lose his money. So I really felt like I knew from a white kid in North Carolina State who was a member of SDS. A lot of people don't know SDS was a white organization called Students for a Democratic Society. They were very radical. They weren't as radical as the Weathermen, but they were radical. And there's one white kid that I had run into at a parade in Raleigh when we saw the Klan marching down the street. And this guy said, "Man, I hate the Klan. I hate them. I know where they have their meetings, man. I want to go torch the place." And he was telling me where the place was and how we should burn it down. And I was a little leery about doing that, but I remember where the place was. So now I'm in need of some money to get my boys out of jail. And I got some guns, but I don't have the cash. I think I can hit two birds with one stone. We can rob the place where the Klan have their meetings and get my boys out of jail. So we're killing two birds with one stone. I'm embarrassing the Klan and I'm getting my guys out of jail. The whole idea was nice and cute and romantic, whatever. And we ended up, the place was, according to the records, they called the Watkins Brothers because they owned a filling station, a general store, and a little lodge where they had their meetings. Anyway, we did rob them. We got the money, but it was a bungling job because it was just, the whole thing ended up where they didn't get the money back. I did bury the money. I got the money to the people who needed to get it to. But me and my co-defendant, Alexander Young, we got busted. And after about a 7-hour manhunt in the woods, it was frightening. If it was a movie, it'd be haunting. And the fact is that we didn't get killed or beat up or anything, but we did get captured. And I went to jail for a long time. I was in jail for 38 days actually before I got out. Because you see, you don't want to go from jail to prison. That's like getting railroaded. You're going to get all the time. You want to get out on bail. So I did get a bail. My bail was set at $100,000. So my wife got $10,000 to get me out after about 38 days. But during that 38 days in jail, which I'd never been in jail in my life, that's when I really think I discovered a certain strength in me that I didn't know existed. I had a period where I went off on the preacher who used to come and they preach every Saturday and had these little girls singing some Christian songs, and I went off on the whole crew and scared them away from the cell block. But the next day, the head jailer, matter of fact, he wasn't the head jailer, he was the only black jailer named Mr. Rogers. He actually called me, and I thought that I was getting bailed out. I was going to go home, and I was put in solitary confinement. When I was put in solitary confinement, which was they call it in Wake County Jail, it really is called the hole. The hole is a place. It's just a cement floor, and there's a hole in the middle of the floor where you can do all your stuff, and they give you a bucket with a rag and ammonia to keep the smell away, and the hole. That particular cell is right next to the drunk tank, so you're smelling all the puke and whatnot that drunks bring with them when they get busted. I mean, it's a disgusting, horrible situation, and you have no pillow and you got no mattress. So I'm sitting on the floor, and I learned for the first time in my life how to meditate because I wanted something soft under my butt. So I started imagining I had a pillow under my butt because it was hurting, and I also was in a cell and I didn't know if I should cry. I didn't know what to do, but I realized that, I'm not really an devout Christian on any level, but I was raised in this society like the rest of us. And Jake, the lines came to me like as natural as water. I'm sitting on this cold floor and I'm saying, what should I do? I mean, it's dark in here, it stinks, it's horrible. This is a punishment for what I said to the folks coming to our cell block. Goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That line came into my head naturally. And I'm going to tell you, from that moment, I was chilled. I cooled out. I turned the wall in front of me into different colors. I didn't put images on them, but I could make them green or yellow or red or purple. I was having a color slideshow. I was learning how to meditate. The Rogers came to check on me one day, and he opened up the cell, and he touched me on my shoulder, and he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." He says, "Man, you've been sitting like that for 8 hours." And I mean, I had no knowledge of time.
Wow.
That was a pivotal moment. That was a pivotal moment in my life, and I discovered a certain inner strength that I'm grateful for, and it really did help propel me through the rest. Because when I finally did go to trial, and when the Judge James H. Pugh Bailey gave me and at my partner 12 to 20 years, I wasn't shook. It didn't, and I realized it was a part of me that needed to go through some stuff because I was really burning up. I was very pissed off after they killed Dr. King. And I mean, one thing, I was either going to get a bullet or I was going to go to jail. I had to go through something because I was very angry, I was upset, and I wanted to lash out at those folks who I felt were totally wrong in killing a man standing on a platform of peace. I felt offended, and I wanted to relate. The cultural piece was cool. I'm a poet. I'm respected. I'm doing this Yoruba thing that's all very fine and dandy, but there was a part of me that wanted to like break somebody's neck. I mean, I had some anger that I needed to get out. Prison cooled that out. It gave me time out. Prison was the best medicine for me. I learned how to play chess. I never dreamed I'd learn how to play chess. Never. I had no time to be learning how to play no damn chess. I became a chess champion in prison.
Wow.
I played basketball every day. I worked in the prison hospital. I avoided going to medical school because I didn't like blood. I ended up actually being a nurse in the prison hospital there in Raleigh, North Carolina. I mean, it was crazy. It was like a divine order that I could not see. But once I got into it, it was perfect. I wrote every single day. I have an orange cabinet here in my study, and it is everything in that cabinet says the State Department of Correction. I use a paper that I'm talking about. I have thousands and thousands of sheets of paper that I got from them where I wrote poems and short stories and essays and songs. I wrote every single day. I wrote 2 books. I was writing. I tell people I never really served time, Jake. I got time to serve me. I worked that. I never suffered. And the other thing that really freaked me out, I'm in there. My case was known. I robbed the Klan. They didn't say the Klan. They used the Watkins brothers, but they know who they were. And I went to prison for it. And the part that can be real revealing for any inmate is mail call. Because when your mail call comes and the CO is calling out your name to let you know you got mail, people watch you. and they want to know if you got someone on the outside who's looking out for you, you by yourself. Now, if you're alone, you don't have nobody writing you, you become a target for a lot of different things, and I can't even discuss it on the radio. I mean, it could be very perverted stuff that jumps off once people discover you don't have nobody that cares about you. And I stand there, and I was standing in a circle, and Perry was our corrections officer in the hospital dorm. And Jake, I'm gonna tell you, I understand it now, but the guy pulled my coat. I never had to stand in that circle waiting for my name to be called. If I had mail, all I had to do was go look under my pillow on my bunk, and that's where my mail would be. I got total respect from my so-called enemies when I was in prison. It was total respect. I never was disrespected by anybody, and I think it was because I came in there with a certain confidence. I was pissed off, yes, when we first had intake, and I had 2 books with me that I planned to read. And I remember the guy that brought the intake officer took the books and tore them up and said, "We got reading material in here for y'all." And I'm saying, damn, what's up? I was upset about that. But I went on and realized I put myself in the situation, and it's a growing and learning experience that I had to go through. And one thing that helped me, I guess, more than anything is the fact that I had a father who was like a damn warden. He was a super disciplinarian. So me getting up, the time in prison to get up is at 6 a.m. I had a father that had me get up every day of my life at 5:30. Man, y'all are getting up late as far as I'm concerned. So you couldn't scare me with getting up early. I mean, other guys just be wiping their eyes. I'd already brushed my teeth, used my little magic shave. I'm ready to go. I'm ready with the day's assignment. When it came to work, my father gave me a work ethic that is ridiculous. I will work as long as I got breath. I can never stop working because my father made me work. He said, "You can't be sitting on your hands. Boy, you're getting undone like that." He was real serious. And he said, he said, "If you're lazy, you're not worth the ground you're standing on." That's an insult. That's ridiculous. I could never be lazy. I worked. I was really willing, ready, and able to do what I had to do. And I'm very independent. I didn't need to join the Muslim guys in the prison. Always try to hook up with groups that are going to be your protectors or whatever. And one guy said, "We're going to read the book." I didn't know what book they were talking about. Talking about reading a book. I thought maybe there's a book about how to act in prison. I don't know. I've never been in prison before. And so they said, "We're going to meet over so-and-so's bunk at so-and-so." So at a particular time, I'm over there, and this guy takes out something that's wrapped up in a sheet, and he starts to unravel it. And then I see the letter K, and then I see a letter O. I said, "Oh, this is a Quran." I said, "I'm not a Muslim, guys. I'm sorry. I don't need to be here." I mean, I might as well take it out a knife and stab them in their chest. They were inviting me to join them because they figured I was cool and I should be in. I don't need I'm not a Muslim. I'm not a part of that. If people want to be Muslims, that's their business. That's what you want to do. Fine. Salam alaikum. I'm cool with all that. I am not a Muslim. And I made it quite clear. The next day, Lieutenant Rice, the CO commander, said, "Well, you can get them boys to help you do your time, and you can help us to do your time. I don't know which way you're going to do it." And I said, "Oh, so that got somebody spying on me, seeing who I'm talking to in the evening, right?" So I told Lieutenant Rice, I said, "Lieutenant Rice, I don't need them boys to help me do my time, and I don't need you to help me do my time." I said, "Matter of fact, I'm not going to do any time while I'm here." "Oh, what you going to do? You going to escape, boy?" I said, "I'm not going to escape. I'm just going to get time to serve me. How about that?" and he said, "Get out of my office. Get out of my office."
Wow.
Oh,
wow.
yeah, no.
Wow.
I had to repeat anything in my life, even though it was harsh and it's not exactly glamorous. I mean, I had to go through that all over again because I mastered myself.
I cannot believe this. This is that's maybe the most profound. I mean, I've heard a lot of stories, but I mean, I actually don't. Abiodun, I don't want to go way too off the grid here, but can you just I'm just going to try to phrase this the right way because.
Go ahead. Say it.
Yeah. No. I mean, I talk to guys like the percussionist Bill Summers and
right.
Basically like so many of the traditions and the cultural and the religions, the polytheism and that stuff that was brought from Africa to the islands turned into this word Santeria. All the words
right,
that were,
right.
it was not. That's not an African name. That's a Rome. Everything was co-opted
Right.
by Europeans. So then
Exactly.
we come to this country. We learn about what really happened with the slave trade and the fact that people basically they split the indentured servants from the slaves, were able to turn them against each other, and also there was a whole Christianity thing. Like they said, well, their skin is too dark if they must not be Christian. They kept
right.
cut their. You told me some of this stuff, but so explain to me. Your dad sounds like he wasn't tyrannical. He was a hardcore dude. I am just trying. Only because his name has been in the news lately. I'm fascinated with your take on the people that you've run into that have the same mindset as Clarence Thomas.
As Clarence Thomas, people are. Ooh, man. I mean,
I'm just trying to say, because we got this this new Supreme Court justice, and she's so great and qualified. Part of him. And then I look up there and I'm like, this guy. I really want you to. I'm naive. I'm just 44. I'm trying to figure out how have you dealt with people that truly. I don't even know what he doesn't really give.
No, Clarence Thomas, we got to recognize we have a lot of black people here who are truly afraid of themselves.
What does that mean? Okay, what does that mean?
Being afraid of yourself means that you do have certain gifts and powers that you refuse to utilize because you want approval from the so-called dominant society. You have already bought into the fact that you are not worthy of your own particular power. Wow. You're not worthy of your strength. You're not worthy of your intelligence. In order for you to be considered intelligent or to be considered worthy, you need to be approved by a certain group of people. White folks have been running things. We've been living in this world of black and white for some time, and it's absolutely pathetic because all people, when we really break it down, we're going to judge people on what they can do, whatever color they are. If I have some problem with my sink, I don't care what color the person. If they come and fix my pipes, I'm gonna give them some slack. Yeah. I mean, period. Right. And I think that basically we all are really like that. But for convenience and for different circumstances, we've created this real, this divide between folks. And you got some intellectual, and it just seems to happen a lot with those so-called intellectual black folks. You got some very intellectual black people who they're not dealing with wisdom, they're dealing with intellect, and they have made a kind of a commitment, or they seem to be obliged to try to be as white as they possibly can for acceptance purposes. They don't really feel good about themselves. And you see, one of the primary things in life for every single person, I don't care what your race is or what your ethnicity is or whatever, you got to feel good about you. Nobody can really say nothing to you if you feel good about yourself. I don't care what you're doing. If you feel good acting like a dog crawling on the ground and it makes you feel good about you, well, nobody can tell you not to do that if that makes you feel good about you. I think that a lot of people try to create situations where it might appear to somebody that they can handle it, when in fact that they are cripples and they're not able to just stand up. The fact is that there are a lot of black people, especially intellectuals, who have rationalized why they are the way they are, and they're doing it from a white level, from a white standard. They're not using their own understanding. That's why when I went to the school, the first time I mentioned in my story about the prison thing, I'm appalled. We had black folks pledging Greek, and we still have that to this very day. They brand them Greek letters on their arm and all that kind of stuff, when in fact, we don't have no clue of our history. We come from Africa. We have societies. Those societies were serious, and they got things done. And we had civilizations, and we need to recognize where we come from and respect that. But because we have been taught something else, many folks don't have the ability to reach that far back, and not the ability. They have the ability, but they don't have the desire, and they're not willing to learn. And after the time goes by, they've accepted the lie, they live the lie, and refuse to remove themselves from it. Clarence Thomas is a classic example. And the sad part about it is that he took that seat from Thurgood Marshall,
I know.
a light-skinned black man who has affiliations with black people to the point where he is actually the person, he is the face of Brown versus Board of Education. I mean, and which simply is simply saying equality for black folks in the school system, which is, of course, is necessary and shouldn't even been a discussion, but we know what it has been, and it still is a problem now. But the deal is that Clarence Thomas is on the other side. He is, unfortunately, a black man who's very smart, I'm sure, who does not know himself, does not care to know himself, and has never really truly felt good about himself, to the point where he even marries a woman who would actually endorse Donald Trump
Oh my
as
God!
the
I mean, it
as
is absolutely. So,
as
what
a
about you? What about where did your father come in on this
my
spectrum?
father was from Savannah, Georgia, and he was. You got to understand something. When I say my father, I'm really talking about my mother. My mother was really my aunt,
Hmm.
and my
Hmm.
my aunt, because my mother had me out of wedlock in the late '40s. I couldn't. If you're in Cincinnati or a lot of those cities at that time, you have a child. It wasn't like now, man. These girls celebrate being pregnant whether they got a guy or not. They walk down the street playing drums on their stomach. I mean,
Right back then, no, you didn't do that.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, back then you didn't do that. You went. My fact, my mother was so upset about being pregnant from this guy that came and joined the church and got to her. She had me at a place they call a home for unwed mothers. I don't even know if they got places like that in America anymore. But
Gee.
but I was born in a place, a home for it was Catherine Booth, home for unwed mothers. When I saw my birth certificate, so I mean it was, but she had to run and hide to have me, and she was not a happy person. She was very sad. I don't know if it was because she's Scorpion, but she was not happy, and consequently, I wasn't happy because I could feel her unhappiness. And I know that as a baby, I recall being in darkness all the time until her sister came over to the house. When her sister came, her older sister, she was like 14, 15 years older, and and as she was known at that time, she was Aunt Beanie. And when she came to the house, she'd open up the curtains, she picked me up, hugged me, and kissed me.
Mm.
Oh man, I was a darling of her life, and she was a darling of mine. And when I saw this woman getting ready to leave Cincinnati, according to the stories, I'm just going by what they told me, and I do remember certain things. But my Aunt Vivian said that I saw Aunt Beanie with her suitcase. She had just married this guy from Georgia named Joseph Davis, and they were moving to New York City. And when I saw that suitcase, she said my eyes got wide, and I ran upstairs and I put on my cowboy hat, my vest, my guns with my holsters with my guns in them, and my cowboy outfit. I don't know who bought the outfit for me. She might have bought it. So I came down. I looked like a little black cowboy, and I said to everybody, "I'm going to New York with Aunt Beanie." And my mother, realizing that I had a serious love for my aunt, until she made a deal with my mother. With my right then, she made a deal with my aunt to let her bring me to New York. My aunt became my mother when I was 3 years old, and her husband became Daddy Joe, my father,
Wow.
when I was 3. And I came to New York with them, and they raised me. And the first track on my album Gratitude is the first poem I've ever written with both of them involved, dedicated because I have a song about Daddy Joe, which is a separate piece, and then I have a poem called Faith, which is about mother. But on Gratitude, I have a piece called Rain. The very first track on Gratitude is dedicated to Daddy Joe and Mother because they raised me and they raised me right. I did not appreciate Daddy Joe. I'll be very honest. The man was from Savannah, Georgia. I thought he was stupid. He only had a third grade education. The man taught me how to grow food. He taught me how to build places. He taught me how to make barbecue pit, how to pave roads, how to how to fix a car, take it apart and put it back together. If I don't do it, Jake, it's because I don't want to. It ain't because I don't know how.
Wow,
My
dude, I wish that is some of those life skills are, but you didn't want to do them. But still, that's kind of functional stuff, man.
and that's what sustains me, man. It's the discipline that he enforced. My father had, like I said earlier, he had a rule. I got to be up at 5:30. Everybody in this house better be up at 5:30. I had I, I had no.
Oh man,
I had
dude.
a friend that wanted to spend the summer with me. He wanted to spend 2 weeks. His name is Johnny, and matter of fact, he became Stevie Wonder's accountant as time later on in life. But John Ritter is his name, but the actor, and he was a good friend of mine. He lived in the projects, and I lived in a private house, and he wanted to spend like 2 weeks, and they talked to his mother, talked to my mother, and it was agreed. He's going to spend 2 weeks with me. All right. He didn't know the rules, but we were all happy to be together because he was my friend. And when it came up, when the morning came, they just, all right, time to get up, everybody. And Johnny got up. He's like kind of druggy. And then Dejo said, we're going to make some money today. And, oh, Johnny liked that. The idea we're going to make money. We're like about maybe, I guess, 10, 11 years old, something like that. And so Johnny said, ooh, we're going to make money. I said, yeah. But he had no idea. I knew it was going to be rough, but Johnny didn't know. He was not from that. He wasn't living with me. We went out to a potato farm in Oyster Bay, Long Island. And I don't know if you've ever picked potatoes, Jake, but picking potatoes ain't no joke because potatoes are like roots. You got to go in the ground, and you got $1 for every 5-pound bag of potatoes that you pick. So that means you got to pick a lot of 5-pound bags if you want to have any dollars. And I knew how to work because J. Joe made me, and he would get on my case if I didn't work hard and fast. Johnny didn't know how to work. He was slow. But when we finished that day's work, Johnny had a little money, but he was tired and he fell asleep in the pickup truck on the way home. When we got back to my house, Johnny started putting his clothes back in the suitcase. I said, what are you doing? He said, I can't stay here, man. He says, first of all, you get up too early and I work like a mule. He says, man, this is horrible. And Johnny spent exactly 2 days at my house, and that was it. He couldn't handle it. But I also, my father was a worker, and he also had some serious politics. And he hadn't read no doctor. I don't know if he could really read, to be honest, but I do know that he had wisdom for days because that's how we lived. And he believed in always having enough for a rainy day. So if the supermarkets were on strike, we didn't ever suffer. We had a freezer full of food, and everybody knows that Labor Day and 4th of July, you didn't have to have the address of where I lived. All you do was have a nose. You could smell where I lived because we had a pig on the pit. You could smell the barbecue for blocks. And my mother and father were very resourceful. They'd be selling sandwiches and dinners. It was off the chain.
Hey, hold on. And was this in New York City, or were you out on the island, or where were you?
This is in Queens, New York.
Unbelievable, dude. This is I am loving, dude. It is so good. So
South Jamaica, Queens. Yes.
Wow. I mean, when you say when you've come in contact, I mean, you're such a great speaker, so articulate. Obviously, you walk the walk. You've worked your ass off. Clearly, I mean, the potato fields. I mean, I probably would have been like Johnny, dude. I would have been like, I can't deal. But when you come in contact with people that don't want to know who they are or their heritage, what if, even in the past, regardless of whether before you went to jail and you were kind of pissed off and angry about Martin Luther King, or even after a gentler, kinder Abiodun, how have you dealt with people that that think that the power, the system in place, white power system, is the only system?
But you see, we have to recognize that it was very interesting that you played the piece that brought us on today.
Yeah,
where we say that we have the power, we make the day. You have to believe that. You know, like my computer, like everybody gets different stuff on their computer. And today I had to see my doctor for my regular checkup. And I'm always apprehensive before I go to the clinic because I don't know what she's going to say that I had an x-ray. I don't know what the x-ray says. I don't know. It's always something, a little doubt, because
sure.
I mean, I feel well, but I could be sick. I mean, I don't know. But everything turned out to be pretty good today. I have one clinic I do have to go to in about a month just to check on certain things. But basically, I'm in good shape and I should be here for a while. The fact is that understanding that there are certain things that we just don't want to face. And one of the quotes that came on my computer the other day was, "We have to master fear. You don't allow it to take over you. You have to learn courage." Matter of fact, the quote was, "Courage is mastering fear."
I love that. Right. I do that. I'm gonna get a tattoo on my forehead of that, dude. I love that.
Isn't that a great line?
It's not, no, because I've been talking about courage a lot, and now it's incorporated with mastering fear. I freaking
That's right.
love
Courage
it.
is, and so I had that quote. I was talking to a sister friend of mine before I went to see my doctor. Before I went to see her, and I told her the quote. She says, "That's a perfect quote to take with you before you see your doctor." I know. I said, sometimes the gods work in mysterious ways. They come through the computer and they drop lines on
That's
you if you
right.
pay
That's
attention.
right, man. Jeez.
So I've learned, no, I've learned how to adjust to a lot of things. A part of understanding. First of all, I know for a fact that I've always loved people. Period. That's just a part of who I have always been. I don't know if it's because I'm a Pisces or what. I don't know what it is. It's just a part of who I've
No,
been.
I think I do. I love it. I'm a Pisces too. I think that's something to do with it. Go ahead.
It might have, because I find people to be very interesting, and I like people of all walks of life. Matter of fact, the reason I was not raised with my other brothers and sisters, or raised by my biological mother, she had me, and I was with her for the earlier parts of my life up until I was 3, and she was courting this man that she eventually married and had 4 children by, and his name was Harold, God rest his soul, and he a nice looking Duke Ellington looking brother. And he was cool, but for some reason my spirit did not relate to him, because she said that when the key would come in the door, I would tune up, and of course that's the expression for saying I'm getting ready to cry. And then so she said that was a real problem, and she couldn't figure out what was wrong. So she tried to do this bonding thing by asking Hal to take me to get a haircut. Now I'm 3 years old. Take a kid to get a haircut. That's a perfect place to get to know the kid,
Right.
And you're getting ready to marry his mama. Of course, this is an ideal time. So he takes me to the barbershop, and my mother says she sat there at the window waiting for us to come back, waiting to hear how it all turned out. And so she sees us coming down the block, and she's excited because, I've been gone for a little while, and I got my hair cut, and she could see that. And I come upstairs, and she says, "Well, how did it go, Harold?" She said, "I'll never take that boy any place again, ever." She said, "But what did he do? What happened?" He talked to everybody. He acted like he was an ambassador, running up and down the barbershop, talking to strangers he didn't even know. And my mother says, "Harold, that's who he is."
Yeah.
And right then she realized he can't be raising my boy. He doesn't know who he is.
I just want to be clear. This Duke Ellington looking cat was not your biological father.
No, not my biological.
This is eventually the man that your mother married and had children with, 4 children with.
Exactly.
All right, so that was not. Yeah, this is so beautiful when you talk about God works in mysterious ways. That judge puts the gavel down and says 12 to 20 years for you. Then,
right.
But I'm reading today that you looked at that and said, "Hey, I'm unfazed. I'm learning to meditate. Like I'm meditating, and then early release 2.5 years in, right? Is that right? About less than 3 years?
Yes, sir. That's right.
Talk about that sort of being in the house of the Lord. Like, I mean, to me, like that is there's nothing more powerful than God revealing itself in this life in the real time. And to me, like that, it was an way over the top sentence. You didn't kill anybody. There was a manhunt for 7 hours in the woods, whatever,
right.
But tell me about that feeling of vindication is absolutely the wrong word. It's more like just essence. And when you found out you were going to have that early release, to me, that is a sign that you were living a righteous life.
Well, you know what? There was a moment there where I felt I'd missed the revolution.
Right. I bet.
Because it just so happened that simultaneously, when I got the sentencing, the album came out about a month. See, we had recorded the album in '69.
Right.
But the first album of The Last Poets came out in 1970, and it was a blockbuster. Alan Douglas didn't know it was going to be a blockbuster. Nobody knew it was going to be a blockbuster.
That's the best.
But it became that because 1 million copies were sold, and it was by word of mouth. There was no social media back then. So we're talking about people getting it and telling their friends, "You better get it." So we had 1 million, and matter of fact, till this very day, that album is being sold, which is outrageous.
It's still,
And
dude. I mean, it's still. I mean, I've only. It's not like there are just so many copies out there. I do see it once in a while. It's unbelievable, man.
yeah, man. So we tapped into something that really has a staying power, and I feel really good about that. And it really kind of blew me away because here I am incarcerated, and the guy that I had decided to talk to is from Charlotte, North Carolina. He came over to my bunk one day talking about New York, New York, the Big Apple. That's my poem. That's one of the poems that I wrote on the album, and I'm doing it. So I told Bird, I said, Bird, I said that's my poem, man. And he said, man, what are you talking about? That's my poem. I know the whole poem by heart. I said, no, you don't understand. I wrote that. So then Bird looked at me and said, New York, because they call me New York. And if you're in prison and down in another state,
Sure,
they
sure.
call you by the state where you're from. So they said, New York. Those guys are from New York, man. And this album just came out. You were in here when I got here. I said, I know, but the album was recorded a year ago. And
he must have freaked
Yeah,
out, dude.
yeah, he looked at me. He says, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I said, Bird, I'm not. I think I'm tripping. I'm not tripping. And I said, I'm not telling you to run around telling everybody that that's me, but that's me. So I'm saying, how can I make him realize that I'm not making this up? And that's because he just couldn't believe it because I'm in prison with him. So what happened is I said, listen, your wife comes to visit you every Sunday religiously, right? Because she did. And it was early in the week. I said, write her today. Tell her to bring the album cover with her to the back hall. The back hall was where they had visiting. I said, now, there's a picture on the cover. You look at that picture and you come back and tell me who I am. And he came back with tears in his eyes.
Oh, I love it. Oh,
he
man.
Said, he says, what are you doing in here? You're my hero, man. What are you doing in here? I said, I committed a crime, Bird, obviously. And I said, and I don't need any more publicity. So please don't divulge what you know. But you know what, man? That was the hardest thing because we'd be in the cafeteria and he would be staring at me, just staring at me. And I say, Bird, you got to stop staring, man. People think you're trying to make a bitch out of me or something that's going on here. He says, I can't believe you're in here. I said, believe it, I'm here, man. He says, but damn, man. He says, I said, Bird, forget about that. I said, I've been talking to you. We're friends. I want you to know what's going on. I said, it's okay. But during that time, there was my first royalty check came through. My wife got that. Everything was cool. I mean, in terms, I didn't have any of the fruits of that particular labor at that time because I was incarcerated, but I felt very good. And it's almost like the God said, we're going to do this without you because you already laid down the groundwork and you'll get your reward later on. But right now you got to do this. And I look at it as perfect timing because I was young, I was brass, and I needed to learn how to smooth out the rough edges. I needed to learn and I needed to practice my craft, which is writing. And those days when I spent time writing, I think that's one of the reasons why now there isn't anything you can give me to write that I cannot produce. I mean, my writing skills are off the chain, and I know that.
Oh my
because
God, it's unbelievable. I just want to be clear though. So I remember I've done a couple interviews with Brian Jackson, and he was talking about all the the older jazz cats saying you got to get publishing, you got to get your publishing. So many cats got ripped off by that. How did you guys? Who hipped you to the idea? That who were the elders that looked out for you that said, hey man, you need to get your names on this so you would get royalties?
Well, I had this lawyer, Larry Phillips was my lawyer, and I didn't know. I think Elijah. I have to give Elijah credit. Elijah was a conga player on our very first album, and he got a hold of Larry Phillips because when the first royalty check came, Larry Phillips wrote me and said, "You have a royalty check here for $21,000."
Oh my dear Lord!
What should I do? Should I give it to your wife? And I wrote him back and said, "Of course." And I kind of felt it was a no-brainer. Of course, give it to her. He wrote me back and said the reason he had to get permission from me to give it to her because he said a lot of times the guys get busted if there's any money involved. A lot of those relationships change drastically because the person's incarcerated.
Sure.
And I have to be certain before I give her the check. And I was like almost insulted because I figured why not give her the check? But he had a point because she did hook up with somebody else. We were not married when I got out of prison. I didn't even want to see her. I actually plotted to kill her once because I called when I did get a study release. I was looking at the situation. Said, now I'm in here, but I got some money I could look forward to having when I get out of here, and I just had my whole life kind of scheduled. And I went to see the board of paroles, and the woman asked me, says, now, if you get your custody change, what would you prefer to do? You have two choices down in North Carolina when they change your custody, because I was, of course, under maximum security, but I want my custody changed to medium. If you get medium security, that means you have privileges. You can either go on work release or study release. Now, you don't have too many inmates doing study release because that means that they're going to college and that means they're paying a tuition. I had money, man. I had a royalty check. I can pay my tuition. That's not a problem. I'm definitely not interested in doing work release, which is like being a chauffeur for the governor or mowing his lawn or cleaning his furniture. No, no, no. I'm gonna. I'm
Yeah, you
going
did
to
enough of that with your step or your yeah,
with Daddy Joe.
Daddy
I've
Joe.
done
Yeah, you did enough
yeah.
of that.
I've done enough of that. I'm going to finish my education.
Mm.
So when the lady asked me, says, "Well, if you do get your custody change, what do you plan to do?" I said, "Well, I plan to go to back to Shaw University and finish my education." She says, "Well, according to the money you have in the back hall, I believe Shaw University still charges for tuition." I said, "The money I have in the back hall is not the only money that's available to me. I wasn't gonna. They didn't need to know that I had extra money, but she was so. Well, if you cannot pay the tuition, you're going to end up right back here in maximum security." So I was clear that I had enough money because I knew that I did. Anyway, when I got out, I got on the phone, on public phone, and I called my wife and I said, "Send me $5,000 because I wanted to pay the tuition and buy some clothes because I'm now going to be in prison at night, but I'm going to be at school during the day. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
I need some clothes. I need to look like a normal human being." She told me, "I don't have 5,000. I wanted to kill her. I swear to God. I wanted to fly a plane up to New York City, kill her, and get back to be in prison on time."
Wait a minute, Abiodun. Wait, hold on a second. Towards the so the first, but I mean, when the lawyer called you, how?
Well, when he called me, that was in the mail. We were discussing what to do with the check. But when I finally got my custody changed and I got out, I called her to have her send me some money because I knew she had the check. She had the check. She got it like 3 months before I got my custody change. How do you spend money like that? She said that she didn't have 5,000 to send me, and I said, "Well, what happened?" She says, "We had to live." I mean, come on. She was getting public assistance because I was in prison. That's automatic. Any woman that has a husband who is incarcerated automatically gets public assistance, and I knew she was getting that. Plus, she's living with her mother. I mean, and her father. I mean, what's she doing? And she had squandered some of my money, and I was upset. She did send me $2,000, which I only needed 1,500 to pay for my tuition, and I had 500 extra. But the fact
Well,
is,
you had 500 for your clothes, but the point is that. But I just want to be clear. You made the record. It didn't come out till right before you had the custody change. So there was only one royalty check. It wasn't like she was taking all the. You weren't getting.
no.
It were
Just
multiple
one
royalty checks that she was like embezzling.
No, just one,
Yeah.
one.
Wow, that is so you did pay you got the tuition, boom. So you were going to school.
I was going to school, and I even had a father away from home. His name was Oyewole Dupree, God rest his soul, and he showed me how to get other monies, grant monies, because of my situation. So I was covered. My bill at the school was entirely covered. I had no problem, no stress in that department. So that was good. But I was very upset because I just knew that I had a lump sum of money to look forward to, and that was not the case. And I was very bitter and upset about that. But I've never really, to be perfectly honest, that moment it hit me because my freedom was on the line. But I'm not really a money person, so I got over all that, and I've made that money 1,000 times over. So me and my son's mother. I mean, that's my first mother, my son, BG. She and I are very, very close. We're good friends. And matter of fact, when I was in her house in Texas, she lives in Texas. She says, "I got some beautiful letters that you wrote me." I said, "BG, you keep those letters in the shoebox." I said, "I was pouring my heart out to you. I had no one else to write to. You got all of my love. I know those letters are juicy." She says, you ought to just read them. I said, no, I'm not going to read nothing. And she likes to tease me because she saved all the letters. Of course she saved the letters. I'm sure I have some poetry in there that Shakespeare would have to give me a standing ovation over. because I mean, you got no one else. There's no one else that I can pour my passion into but my wife. And I'm writing her and missing her because she actually the day that I went and tried to and did the armed robbery thing with my man, she looked at me and I was in the doorway of our house, and she says, "I don't think today is a good day," and I went crazy on her. I said, "Who's doing this? You or me?" And I just bullied her, and she just looked at me and threw her hands up. And the next time I saw her, I was on the other side of the plexiglass.
I was in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, a couple weeks ago, and I kind of lost my mind because I found this. It's kind of water damaged copy of on Juggernaut Records soundtrack, "The Last Poet's Right On." But is it fair to say that you were not available? Were you on?
No, I was in prison.
You were in prison during this. I knew it. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, but that was another real big issue while I was incarcerated. See, what happened is that the original Last Poets was myself, a young man named David Nelson, and a man named Garland Kane. We are the original members. I was the youngest in the group, and I didn't know nearly as Kane, as far as I'm concerned, gave the Last Poets our aesthetic. Garland Kane is or was a tremendous poet, an excellent poet, one of the best poets ever. I mean, he's got some. To give you an example, whenever I have folks that want to share erotic poetry with me, because that's a big deal these days, erotic poetry, which is a lot of times just nasty.
Yeah.
I always say, or like one guy had a poem, he's talking about this girl sprayed her coochie juice all over his face. I said, that's not erotic. That's nasty. I said, an erotic line would be, hey, say blackness, say color of earth, say soft maroon lady. Can I talk to you? Can I touch you? Can I stretch in the soil of your hair?
Wow.
That's a line from Garland Kane. And I said, and if you can't figure, if you say that to a woman and she says, you walk away from her because she can't think. And the fact is that there's only one part of a man's body that stretches. And if you don't know where the soil of her hair is, then she's lost and you're lost too. I said, the reality is that is an erotic, poetic line that simply says, I want to do you. But it says it in such a beautiful way. And I said, and so Kane gave the Last Poets that we could not get on that stage without doing poetry. We couldn't just get up there ranting and raving and claiming revolution or black power or nothing. We had to have a poetic way of saying whatever we were going to say. He wanted us to be true to the art form of poetry. And it was David's idea to bring the group together. He had the concept of, he figured if he had poets together dealing with the same basic theme, maybe it'll be a good example for black people to recognize how we've got to shelve our differences and unify in order to get this foot. There's the same foot on our necks, but we cannot get it off our necks if we don't come together to do that. So David had a point of unity that he was trying to make, and Kane was serious about the aesthetic. And I wanted to do something because I was mad about what happened with Dr. King, and I was bold and brass, and I'm a good student. I was willing to learn. So I was writing poetry, but I became much more profound hanging out with cats that are really good and learning, just like the jazz guys, just like, because black poetry and jazz have a lot in common. And you got some cats that know how to do it, and the younger cats come behind them and try to learn. And that's where I was coming from. And as time was going on, I was getting stronger and stronger. And I became a problem for Garland Kane because he really wanted me to be his son. He wanted to like control me. I had a father. Daddy Joe was a monster. I did not need another monster in my life. You got to be kidding. And you can't even walk in the shoes of my father. Forget that. So I was not willing for having be my son. I mean, be my father. Felipe was always hanging around. Felipe Luciano.
Mm-hmm.
And he was always hanging around our space, which was called the East Wind. And he was willing to let Kane be his daddy because his father was gone, wasn't in the house. It was just his mother and his sister and his brother. So Kane was like, telling him what to do. Matter of fact, Kane even asked him if he had ever directed a play. Felipe had never directed no play, but he lied and said he did. And Kane had this one-man play. Check the name of the play. I remember the name of it. Epitaph to the Coagulated Trinity.
Wow.
I mean, and that's not a convoluted title. I don't know what it is, but Felipe went on and he directed that one man play, and it's a great play where Kane plays three different characters or three different situations. I mean, and he's very good at what he does. He's got that it factor in terms of being a producer off the stage. He's good. I always say Kane was a cross between Jesus Christ and James Brown. He didn't want to walk on water. He wanted to slide across the water. Wow. But that's his spirit. And then me and Felipe, when we became members, when the group became, because David was the first to leave, ironically, even though it was his idea. And then David said that we kicked him out. David took himself out of the group because he went on a field trip with his psychology class from Columbia University, and was during a weekend when we had Sunrise Orchestra, Leroy Jones, Spirit House Movers and Players, and the last was that ticket was big. We sold out tickets 2 weeks before the show even happened. That was a very
where was the gig, by the way?
It was at our space, the East Wind, which was 9 East 125th Street between 5th and Madison Avenue.
Wow.
It was and the place was sold out. That was because that was another thing Kane suggested. He said if we get a place, we can have something to endear ourselves to the community. And that was perfect because we had workshops there. We did all kind of creative writing workshops. Matter of fact, the biggest theater company in the city came out of there, National Black Theater. They started in our place. Barbara Antia rented space from us at $75 a month back in 1968. Wow. I mean, I don't know.
That's like a couple thousand. That's a lot of money back then.
I mean, come on, are you kidding? I mean, a whole bunch of stuff that was happening, and we had a place so we could produce shows. We produced Dawn and Albert Isla. We produced a whole lot of Don Pullen's.
I love this. God, I love this. This is so great. What, by the way, Arts Ensemble of Chicago?
Yes, Arts Ensemble of Chicago, and Pharaoh Sonnets and Leon Thomas, Lonnie Liston Smith. I mean, we had some monster shows. Sunrise Orchestra. Oh, come on. It was a monster. And here we got one of the biggest weekends of performing, and we've sold tickets out, and David's talking about, he says, I'm not going to be there on Friday and Saturday, but I'll be back on Sunday. And Kane said, I'm going to tell you like the Jew. If you can't come to work Monday, don't come Tuesday.
Right.
And I supported it because this is very key. And it's just three of us, and all of a sudden you're going to just make it two of us. And Felipe was waiting in the wings. He didn't have any poetry, but he knew all the background. Plus, I like working with Felipe because he could sing. David didn't really have a voice for singing. And Kane loved it because it made him look great because he had a big piece, like a church piece, where he was like the preacher and we were like the choir. And we had a good time as a choir. We enjoyed pumping Kane up because he was good at what he did, and it made a nice production. So the group was myself, Felipe, and Kane for a minute. And during that, but back then, a month was almost like a year because time was just light speeds, man. It was so fast. Everything was happening quick. So at one point, Felipe says that I said to him that his folks in Spanish Harlem needed organization. So he actually left and went to start a group called the Young Lords, which was like a Puerto Rican Panther organization. And he was a community activist in El Barrio in Spanish Harlem. Kane was never really a black nationalist like I was. Kane was about being an actor. Kane was about theater. Kane was about like the aesthetic. And he went down to the village and he did something. He had a place called the Blue Gorilla, and then the Holy Ghost Fallout Shelter, I think he called it. And I think he played in Julius Caesar or something in some play. But Kane's always had this aesthetic. Then he moved to Amsterdam. He lived in Amsterdam for 40-some years. He just moved back, I heard. I haven't seen him, but they say he's been here for about 2 or 3 years now. I just say he's not well. I don't know what's wrong with him, but I do give him his credit for being a major cog in my wheel because I learned a lot from him. He was a gifted poet, and I gained a great deal of knowledge from him. But the fact is that Kane went and moved down. So I'm just quick in the story.
No, it's fine, dude. I love this. This is unbelievable.
I became the last poet, and it didn't make any sense because I'm not riding like the Lone Ranger and running around doing poetry. But no. The group was set already. 3 guys and a conga player, and I'm going to get that back together. So Umar Ben Hassan, he had come to New York City to join Last Voice, and it didn't make no sense, but we were not recruiting anybody. But he had this passion to want to do what we were doing. And then there was another guy named Jalal Mansour Nuruddin who passed away a couple of years ago from cancer, and he rhymed all of his poetry. I mean, he if he had a conversation with Jalal, it would turn into a rhyme. I mean, he had a rhyming like a affliction. I mean, it was crazy. I thought he was good because his rhymes made sense. Kane hated him. He never wanted him in the East Wing. He said, "Keep that nursery rhyming MF away from me." He didn't like his work. They had issues with each other, and I could never understand it. But because Jalal's rhymes, even though they were rhyming, he still had made some sense. It wasn't silly rhymes. They was meaningful rhymes. But when Felipe left and Kane left, I put Umar and Jalal into the group, and my conga player stayed. And Elijah, he was there throughout the entire time, and that first album was recorded, and that's what people know as the original members of the group. And then here right now, I'm like the old guy in the group after being the youngest guy in the group, and I'm really kind of like getting tired of this group because we're just getting on stage doing poetry. I'm not choking nobody. I'm not shooting nobody. I'm not a real revolutionary. I'm being called a revolutionary because I'm writing some damn poetry and I'm getting on stage running my mouth. And that far as I was concerned with my energy at that particular time in my life, that was insufficient for me. And there was an organization named the Harlem Committee for Self-Defense, an organization of black women who were doing research on land encroachment in Harlem by the government. And one of the places that they were encroaching was 125th Street and Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard. They wanted to build this Harlem State office building. These sisters did not want that building to go up. They wanted a central high school because there is no central high school in Central Harlem. And so that was an effort for that. And they got me on board to be a part of that because they didn't have any men in their organization, but when they needed manpower, they called on me because they knew I was always obliging. And so they gave me money to get some watermelons. I went to the Bronx Market. I filled up my car with these watermelons. They sliced up enough slices for everybody in Harlem and got all these people to come onto the site. And we had this major demonstration with the thought that we would stop the bulldozers from excavating the land the next morning. The bulldozers never came. We claimed the place called the Reclamation Site #1, and I was out of the Last Poets. I figured this is my exit. I'm no longer going to be running around doing poetry. I am now involved with this activity of taking over this land, reclaiming what's ours, and so forth and so on. So I got really crazy. Umar came to see me and said, "Man, we got a gig." I said, "You'll do the gig. I'm not doing nothing." I took myself away from the group. So here I'm not in the group. And then I go down to North Carolina and I'm in school. I'm finishing my education. And I started the Yoruba Society. I'm doing all this other stuff. I'm not thinking about no Last Poets, nothing. And then all of a sudden, this album that we recorded during the last moments that I was in the group, because we recorded it a whole year before it ever came out. Now it's come out. And when the album came out, it caused such a stir. Kane, David, and Felipe felt totally left out because they had been original members. And now everybody's talking about this album and everything, and I'm not even on the scene. So Kane blamed me right away. He said, "I put those renegades in the group and blah, 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 blah." I said, "What am I supposed to do? You left. And I'm supposed to stand there by myself? Are you crazy?" So he blamed me because they didn't get the shine that we were getting from that album. And Felipe and David and Kane got together with Woody King and somebody else, and they did an album called the original Last Poets, Right On. And they also did a movie to go with it. And it all got sued by my lawyer, Larry Phillips, because the group's name was being used, and you can't take the name of another group because our name was copywritten and they couldn't use it. So everything that supposedly came in.
Absolutely right, man. I think I might actually just trade that record in now, though. I'm really bummed you're not even on the record.
No, but it's okay because it was an example of some guys that had been in the group and they're still Last Poets. Listen, when we do gigs, Jake, all over the world, when Umar and I do a gig now, Umar didn't necessarily do this. I decided that this needed to be done. We never, ever do a gig without mentioning each person who has graced the stage as a Last Poet. I want everyone to know they were all together throughout the history of the group. There were 7 men who performed as Last Poets. There was Suleiman El Hadi, and he was supposed to be the one to take my place when I was no longer there. Jalal continued the group going on, and so did Umar. And they did a couple of albums together. One, matter of fact, called This Is Madness. That was the second album, and that was a big hit as well. And they did some good stuff. But the fact is that then they did The Lights of the Garden, and I think Suleiman's on that. So the group continued. But so I always want to give credit to each poet. And I think it makes sense. There were 7 members of the group. Even though there were fights, people didn't get along, folks were talking about you stole my sunshine and all that kind of stuff. The reality is that there were 7 poets all told that made up what is now bigger than a group. It's more or less an institution.
And I just want to be clear that your tenure ended after the first album.
Yes, absolutely.
Unbelievable. Okay, we have a game on this program called Name That Voice. Pay attention to the voice and also the content, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Okay.
Yes.
That we were a small aspect. It's not like radicalism was built into the majority of the black community. Radicalism wasn't a majority among the white community. It was just mostly this whole thing that was coming out of the college-educated students who were pursuing college, and we were just locking into, for the first time, a world movement. There was a revolution in the world. Now today, I don't know if that kind of thing is necessary. I think what's necessary now is how to form coalitions and alliances. You can't do nothing, if you just this or that. You've got to do it in being connected to something bigger, much more of an umbrella. So that's my point. I mean, those things were necessary for that time. I don't think that would even work now, and it shouldn't work, But I think what we're talking about politically, I'm gonna go back to what my point was.
Yeah.
This country is dying from a two-party system, and if anybody doesn't understand that, it's like you're gonna be more concerned with your pimples rather than the cancer you got. Okay? You're like, oh, my pimples are clearing up, my acne's getting good. Yeah, but you got cancer, and we have a cancerous political system, and you have 2 parties, and remember, they don't go anywhere. One has it for 4 years or 8, then the next one goes in. It's silly.
Okay, let me ask you. Abiodun, do you know who that is?
I was trying to figure it out.
I bet that first of all, I want to read this. This is from the same cat, and because I really think that you guys knew each other. He said, Elect Bulan was a name given to parts of the African continent. Dr. Benny Johannes would come back to Africa every summer with black scholars. They would come back and talk about Elect Bulan. The very first record I ever did at a club called The East, Stanley Cowell's on piano and Dugu Chancellor, and Billy Hart is on drums, Buster Williams on bass, 3 vocalists and young poets. If you ever get a chance to hear the original version, you're going to fall out. That is the late, great, dear friend of mine, Mtume.
Oh my God!
All right, so that was I did 3 interviews with that cat, and what a beautiful.
I
want you to know. I just want you to talk. I just want you to spend a minute before you. The 2 parties thing, whatever. I just talk about Mtume. I miss the guy. I love him so much. First album he ever made was at the East, man.
Yeah, listen, Mtume and I were extremely close. We're very, very close. Matter of fact, Mtume did the music for the TV show New York Undercover.
Absolutely.
And Dick Wolf was the producer of that particular TV show. And whenever Mtume had, when he was recording, because he took all the artists who appeared on that show, they had a club on that show called Natalie's, and they would have these artists perform. So whenever he had an artist down he'd always take the artists and have them come to the studio and record the song fresh. He could have taken it off of their album, but he wanted them to do it fresh. So he had Brian McKnight down there one time, and he called me. He says, "I got a guy down here that says he shot jump shots in your face." All right, because Brian McKnight plays basketball, and I say, "Yeah, okay." So somebody's trying to make up some stories because that ain't happening. And then the time that was really fun was when he said, "I got somebody want to talk to you," and so he gave me I got on the phone and said, "Who is it?" And the guy said, "This is Al." And I said, Al, who? He said, Al Jarreau. Who else you think it is? And Al Jarreau I love Al Jarreau.
Oh, my God. My other legend. And I interviewed Al, too, man. I love these guys, man.
Al Jarreau, the gymnastics that he had on his tongue was silly. I mean, his man was gifted.
So
and in so many ways. So I went down and we spent the evening together. But it was during that time that Dick Wolf and Timmy got together and decided to use one of my tracks on an episode of New York Undercover, and it was entitled Black Rage, and it was a very It's a very strong track. The through line was grenades in their eyes, death is their prize, peace will arise, destroy the lies, grenades in their eyes. So I'm talking about the kids and how they got anger in their system ready to blow up. I talk about them being grenades that are ready just to pull the pin and they'll explode. I mean, I'm talking about the tension that many of our young people are walking around with. And it hurts my heart to see and hear of these stories of the young bloods shooting each other up because that's out of order. But the fact is that that tension and that the neglect that they've experienced causes them to self-implode. And that's what's going on,
Yeah, totally.
unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm hoping that Eric Adams, the new mayor, will recognize we got to have centers. We got to have places where these kids can gather and be creative. We got to have places where they can go and let that steam off. Give them something because the community centers are no longer functioning like they used to years ago. I mean, I don't know what they use community centers for now. It used to be for little birthday parties and maybe wedding reception. I don't know, but they need to make it functional for these kids. They like gadgets. They like screens. They like to record. And there's nothing wrong with having all that available to these kids living in the hood. I mean, because otherwise they're going to be wilding and do stupid stuff and cause a lot of pain for themselves and others. And we can stop that if we provide them with something to do that will be constructive, and that can happen. So there needs to be an effort towards that. But the piece that I talk about, I say in that particular poem, even though we're looking at these kids as baggy shadow street boys ready to explode, I say they are young lions enchanted by the sound of their roar. They are rivers with nowhere to run. They are diamonds treated like worthless stones. They are the beauty of spring, blinded by the snowstorms of winter. So I try to make it clear that don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. These are our children. They need to be redirected, and we need to take time to find a way to do that. And so that was done on an episode, but that was all because of Mtume. Now to fast forward.
Well, I want to be clear, just for the record. I mean, I'm looking here. If this is reading correctly, Bernie Worrell was on this track.
Yep,
Bootsy
exactly.
Collins.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
Bill Laswell. Now this came out.
That's
So
right.
you did rejoin the Last Poets. You came back at some point. I thought maybe
Yes.
you bounced out after.
No. I came. Let me tell you something. I tried my best to distance myself from the Last Poets forever. I even had a group down in Shaw University called R, African Revolutionary Ensemble.
Wow.
And
Wait, did you guys record anything?
we yes.
Is it on
And
Vine? I got to find it immediately. Are you
no,
kidding me,
you
dude?
you cannot find it. It's never been produced.
I got it.
But we did record. What happened is that Larry Phillips, my lawyer, got together with Bob Lipton, who ran Regent Sound Studios, and made it possible because we were hot. And I told him I had this group that was hotter than hot. I mean, I think it was like a 13, 14 member ensemble.
Whoa.
And I had my whole group of African Revolutionary Ensemble was about 25 people. But I brought 13 folks up to New York City while I was in prison. Understand, I had a weekend that I got off, and I recorded, and the recording was so outrageous. I remember Bob actually gave me his chair to sit in right behind the console because I was the king. I mean, it was unbelievable. I thought I was Quincy Jones. I mean, I organized this thing, and it was special. And we recorded some outrageous stuff. And they were talking about we should put it out as a double album or maybe one album now, one album later, because we recorded enough stuff for a double album. Something happened along the way, and it never was put out. I've got recordings of it. Matter of fact, I've got the actual
Masters.
recording.
You have the masters.
master.
Oh my!
I have the
God.
master.
Get it. Let's get it out, baby.
I have the master, and the stuff was so rich. It was so special. I recall there was this one young man who used to hang around with my group all the time because I had some fine girls in the group, and his name, he was Ralph Thurman from Chicago, but his name became Cheo, and he's also a Babalawo. He became very important a priest in the Yoruba religion, and he's alive and well, at least I hope so, down in Atlanta. And I remember he used to hang around all the time, and we were getting ready to come to New York to record, and so Cheo says to me, he said, "You want to come to New York?" I said, "What for?" I said, "You don't write no poetry, you don't play no instrument, you don't sing. Why are you gonna come to New York?" I said, "To screw the girls. You already screwed most of the girls in the group. But what are you gonna do? Come to New York? You think it's gonna be different?" He says, "No, man. I said, well, in order for you to come to New York, you have to contribute something. He said, I'm gonna write a poem. I said, you okay? Well, it better be great. So for 2 weeks, me and Baba Finley, my friend who played the flute and wrote poetry, who could sing, we didn't see Chael. He was absent. We didn't know where he was, and he came to the group, and he said he was gonna. I said, well, what's the poem? He said, I'm gonna share with the entire group. I said, whoa. So he shared the poem and was entitled, "We House the Spirits of Our Ancestors." The title alone is a knockout, and the poem itself fulfilled the title to the max.
Wow.
And we recorded this, and I mean, there's some gems on that album,
Oh,
and it's
wait, I'm sorry.
special.
You were on. This is before you were actually put in jail. Or when did this get?
No. This was after I'm on study release. You got to
Study
understand.
really
This,
got it. I know you're in school during the day. You got this.
I'm in
Yeah.
school, man, and I'm doing this, and I had a community pass, which gives you a weekend away from the prison. If you have a respected person in the community who's going to vouch for you, you can be out of prison from Friday to Sunday.
So what
have
did
to
you
be
take a
back.
bus or did you fly to New York? What?
No, we drove. We drove. I played the President Hargraves, who was our president at the time of Shaw University. I played him a game of chess and told him if I beat him playing chess, would he take his credit card and rent a car for
Oh
me?
my God,
And
this
I,
is so
and,
great.
and
Oh
I
my
beat him playing chess. And his nickname was Socrates. But see, if you play a guy that's been playing in prison, that's like I've been in chess university.
God. Right.
I play chess every day.
Right. Right.
I mean, and I don't care how smart you're supposed to be. I've been breathing chess pieces. Come on, and
So
you could
you
not
took
believe.
Socrates to the woodshed that day.
I took him to the woodshed,
Yeah.
and he had to pay. He had to pay up, and I got the car, and we had another car already given to us. One of my folks had a car, and we drove from North Carolina to New York City, recorded, and drove back. And I was back in time to be ready to go back to prison. It was
On
unbelievable
Sunday night.
timing
On Sunday night.
on Sunday
Dude,
night.
so you
Yes, sir.
basically must have stayed. You probably all through. You had and you ripped and the cat who wrote that poem, housing the
We have the
ancestors.
spirits.
Oh,
Yes,
I mean, all
and I
that
had
is
I had
locked
my
in.
girl.
That is so. I just want you.
It, it,
I just want you to finish the story about reconvening with the poets because the track that
Right,
Mtume
right. But
yeah.
what happened is that what happened is with this group, I was so sure that we were going to take it to the next level,
Right.
and we were scheduled to do that because we had been given an invitation to open up for Stevie Wonder at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. 20,000 tickets had already been sold. I got my women, all the ladies in my organization, to get the baddest cloth they could find and don the greatest looking African robes that you could imagine. We looked like royalty coming straight from an African star. It was special, and we were ready. Stevie Wonder got into a car accident. It was 1973, and he was in a coma for 5 days, and my heart was broken. And that's when I realized I could not make home. I could not make North Carolina my home. I've got to come back to New York City because all my dreams were shattered with Stevie Wonder being in that car accident. The concert, of course, was canceled, and just a whole lot of things went awry. And matter of fact, it was Oba, my son, who was a lawyer and very much a part of everything I do today. His mother was the one. She wasn't his mother then because I didn't know his mother, but his mother was the woman who called my house and told me about Stevie's accident. And she said, but all of the people that were going to that of course fans are going to come to the station and say something on a tape that we're going to send to give to Stevie, so maybe that'll help him come out of the coma. At least when he does come out of it, he'll hear these well wishes. So we did. I went there, but we were looking forward because we knew once Stevie heard us that he was going to take us and we were going to be touring with him. We knew that, and it just never happened. And that made me very despondent, and I ended up packing up and getting my parole because I was on parole. I got paroled shortly after that, and I got my parole changed from North Carolina to New York City, and I came back home and I started teaching. The first job I got teaching here was at Columbia University, right where I'm at right now, and it was fabulous. I mean, I was working first in a halfway house, and that made sense because these are brothers coming out of prison. Of course,
Sure.
I'm a perfect counselor for that type of brother. And but then a sister they told me I could come and work as an adjunct professor at Columbia because there was this community education program that was ideal for me. So I did that, and I've been here ever since. But it was during that time, after about 20 years of being in the group originally, I'm doing my life. I've got a family. I'm living. I'm doing a lot of teaching what's called art education workshops all over the city. I would be in schools in Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, maybe three schools a day doing like workshops in creative writing, creative history, creative science. I had a whole creative package where I would be a consultant for different art education agencies and run around the city making money and teaching a lot of kids. And it was unbelievable. And then one day my bell rang and Umar bin Hassan is at the door, told me we got to take our crown back. And I said, what are you talking about taking crown back? He said, man, these kids are running through the mouth. They don't know what they're saying. And we the cats, we the last poets. We need to take our crown back. I said, brother, listen, I write poetry all the time. I ain't seen you in 20 years. What the hell? Umar shared with me some stuff he had done since I hadn't seen him in 20 years, and his poetry was off the chain. He had written some stuff that was crazy because when I knew him in the beginning, all of his poetry was very short. The longest poem he ever wrote, and I made him write it, was called Niggas Are Scared of Revolution. Other than that, if you look at that first album, is Just Because, that's a short poem. Black Thighs, that's a short poem. All of his poetry was just like a minute, and you couldn't hardly get into it, but it was quick. And I told him, I said, what have you learned since you've been in Harlem? You've been in Harlem for like 3 or 4 weeks. I said, what have you learned? He said, I know niggas are scared of revolution. I said, well, write that down. I got chores. I'll be back. And he had written a masterpiece. And from there on, he never wrote another short poem. All of his poems are epics. I mean, wow. I guess I got him started on the wrong path, but it's good stuff. It's very good stuff. So he said that when he said that we needed to come back, I went along, I took his lead, and we started doing gigs. And that's what we've been doing that for the last 30 some years now, all over the world. And we become the darlings of the Edinburgh Book Fair and all that stuff. I mean, it's amazing what's been happening, but it's been testy in certain situations, but it's also been extremely successful. Matter of fact, I was getting ready to say, we actually opened up New Jersey Pack this year because they've been shut down behind the pandemic. And the first show that they had was in November the 11th, and Christian McBride, a jazz saxophonist.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It was his show, and he wanted us to open for him. So here we are. The place was sold out at New Jersey Performing Arts Center, and it was so funny because 2 weeks before the show, I get a call from the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, who happens to be Amiri Baraka's son, Ras Baraka, saying, "Yo, I'm happy you're coming to my town. I just want to ask you, could I do a poem with you?" "Could you do a poem with us? You are Amiri's son." Amiri Baraka was my mentor. I looked up to your father. I'd kiss your father's feet, and you are a poet. And I know you're a poet, but I'm just trying to figure out, where do you get time to write poetry? And you're the mayor of Newark. And he said, man, if I didn't write poetry, I wouldn't be mayor. He says, because that saves me. And he came on that stage. We got there and did our sound check. When we did the sound check, he was right there. So he learned all the background for the poems that I was doing, the poems that Umar was doing. He stayed on that stage. When they called the last poets on, he came on with us like he was in the group. And when it came time for him to do his poem, he did a poem entitled, What We Want, What We Need. And it was rich. It was poetic, and it was rich, and it was on point. And when he finished, I looked at the audience and I said, that's your mayor, y'all. And they gave him a standing ovation for about 10 minutes. It was unbelievable. And that whole gig was put together by Mtume's son, Far. So the beat goes on.
Abiodun, can we, you just absolutely you were on fire the last hour 20. I mean, can we do another set? Because there's a lot more. I'd like to talk to you a little bit. I just have to hop out of here. I got to go get my kids right now. This is unbelievable.
Okay, well, that's cool. Yeah, we can talk again. Sure,
yeah, Juanita. I mean, I'll go to Juanita, but I mean, what a life, man! What a beautiful history, man! And you know what? It's still going on, and I love the album. The track that we lit in on.
Oh yeah, well, thank you. I love it, man. Listen, that's a family project. That's close to my heart, closer than anything.
Well, let's just spend some time next time on it, because we'll get into it. I think that a lot of what you talked about before, the sort of not that it's erotic, but the stuff that people think is erotic today that's nasty versus what's a little bit more substantive, absolutely essential to break that stuff down.
Right. Okay. I'll be glad. Let's do it again.
Yeah, man. Much love to you, man. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
All right.
Later. Bye.
Peace.
Abiodun Oyewole, just blowing minds today. Such an honor, and we'll do it again. Thank you to Juanita Jackson for hooking that up. That's it for the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll be back on Friday. Until then, peace.
I can hear my mother's voice in the rain, telling me don't worry, boy, the sun will shine again. I can hear